everyone. How's it going? And welcome back to Citywide Bytes. Now, for this episode, we are going to be talking about the book Boy with Wings. Our next guest explores the history of the American freak show and what it means to be really different in this world. Author Mark Mustian joins me. Mark, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, at the time of this recording, this book is only about a week away. It's dropping on March 15th.
Yeah,
Um,
week from today. So
I know,
we're getting ready
right?
to hit the world here.
I know. It's like up there, raring to go, ready to get out there and shock everyone. But this is your third book to date now. Does release day get a little less thrilling or more thrilling for you?
I don't know. It's been a long time since book number 2 was published, so I'm super happy to get this out there. And I've worked on it a long time. I've wanted to write this novel for a really long time, and it sort of stopped and started and stopped again. And so I'm proud of the finished product. I think it's going to do well. I think people will enjoy it.
I'll bet they will. Now let us talk about the story of this book. Walk us through what Boy with Wings is all about, and where did the idea come from for this?
Well, the story is about a boy who has these strange kind of appendages on his back, and he ends up in a freak show in the 1930s, traveling the South. And in terms of where the story came from, I've always been a little fascinated with circuses and sideshows and freak shows, and I've done a lot of research about it. And there's a wonderful book, if you've never read it, called Geek Love. That's a sort of the touchstone of this whole, it's just brilliantly done. And so I sort of kicked around the idea of doing this, and I'm based in the South, so the book deals with race and religion, which obviously are big things everywhere, particularly in the South. But it's really about what it means to be different. And so, and people ask me, all right, well, Mark, here you are, a white male born in this country in this time period to parents who loved you and paid for your education. What do you know about being different? But I've tried to touch that place that everybody knows, I think, of sort of being on the outside looking in. And so I hope people enjoy it. I think it's I think it's the best fiction to me, Max, is it works on several levels. There's the story and you're entertained, but it also makes you think. And I hope this book does that.
I think it will. I really do because likewise, I've always enjoyed like the history of the circus and how it's like changed over the years. I mean, today you would not find a freak show. Those are like long in the past. Um, I want to ask about the time period though, like setting this in the 1930s South. How does it factor into the story and what our main character Johnny's dealing with?
Well, I sort of intentionally set it in that time period, and I wanted, the heyday of freak shows was sort of end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and that was, P.T. Barnum, and he had the place in New York, and then it sort of, they spread out to the country, and they would be a part of a circus. And so I wanted this to be sort of in the waning days of that, where, this is sort of a third-rate, circus that traveled by car rather than by train, and sort of got way out into the hinterlands of places that had never seen anything like this. And so, and just sort of to, I think it enhanced people's, reactions to this, these human oddities and strange things, and people, either, in my research of, of freaks, people with, with mutations and different things, through history, I mean, people treat them they either revere them as some kind of, angel or God, or scorn them. They fear them, they're devils, there's something wrong with them. And so, there's a lot of parallels to today and all that reaction.
Okay, I got to ask about the research because I know that for any writer, research is a huge, huge part of what you do. How did you come to learn so much about the freak shows? Because obviously you couldn't go to them anymore.
Well, you actually can. I'll talk about that in just a
Oh,
second.
really?
So,
I didn't realize that
yeah,
they were
so,
still
so
around.
but Florida, which you may know, was the winter spot for circuses in general, including freak shows. And there's a community in Florida, and down near Braden, Sarasota, that where a lot of these people, when they retired, they moved to Florida and lived there. And there's documentaries about them and about their lives and that sort of thing. So I'd watched those. There's a movie called Freaks that came out in 1932 that's sort of the touchstone for, and it's really, you really ought to see it if you've never seen it, because it's all these human oddities that are, sort of gang up against people that are trying to take advantage of them. So it's really, it's really good. But as part of this book, so I tried to find, current sideshow performers, that I wanted to talk to. So what was your life like? And there was a show that was coming through Tallahassee where I live. And so I signed up to go to it, and they canceled it twice. But I reached out to this guy, who is a performer, and his stage name is Short E Dangerously, and he has no legs. He walks on his hands, and so he's going to appear in a couple of appearances with me at bookstores for the book. And I asked him, said, "Well, Shorty," he said, what is it like? I said, well, when I approached him, I said, "Well, I just want to talk to you about what your life is like, if you'll appear with me." And I asked him, said, "What do you like going on stage?" And he says, "I love it. It's my favorite thing. I get to perform." And but I've tried in the book to portray. I think there's a range of reactions where some performers didn't like it, and some it probably made their life better. I mean, they were hidden away in a closet by parents who were ashamed of them, and then they got to live this life. So there was a range of different experiences that I tried to tie into there.
Wow, I really had no idea that these shows were still around. I kind of thought they've been sort of just like phased out over the years. Like
Well,
the way
one of
that
the
like car.
yeah, well, one of the fascinating things on the research is, how, there was a guy, and this is a memoir worth reading, named Ward Hall from Florida, who ran a number of these shows. And so there's a mixture in most of them of sort of fakery and real human oddity. And they would have, there's something called pickled punks, which were sort of jars that supposedly held, two-headed fetuses, that a lot of them were sponge. I mean, that wasn't, but they, his thing was, people didn't really mind being conned as long as there was sort of a little bit of humor in it, or cleverness or whatever. And so if you've seen, you may have, Max, seen the movie Nightmare Alley. There was a remake a couple of years ago with Bradley Cooper, and they captured this sort of whole, sort of third-rate circus, pretty well. With a geek who bit the heads off chickens and this sort of thing, and then some of this fakery where there's mentalists that are, have plants in the audience, and oh yeah, this is, that sort of thing. So it was interesting that, and I tried to capture that dynamic in the book of some rivalry between, I mean, the guys who perform 10 times a day, sword swallowing and fire breathing and really difficult stuff, and the guy who goes out and shows his back, once, and gets, paid the most money. And so it's kind of, it's kind of fascinating to me, at least.
Okay, so let us talk about your main character, Johnny. As you said, born with these weird appendages. They look like wings. I imagine, in the South especially, some people call him a monster, and some people call him an angel. But how did Johnny come to be, and did this character undergo a lot of like revisions during the creation process?
Well, one of the things that I decided to do in the book, so the book is structured with where Johnny's, character, his point of view is a third person point of view, so it's sort of from up above, and then a number of the other characters are first person, where they're reacting to Johnny. And I wanted him to be, I did it that way purposefully, and I had people try and talk me out of it, and I actually tried it different other ways to see if I liked it better, but went back to the way I'd started with, because I wanted this sense of otherness to be a part of him, that he's different. Even if he tried to be the same, he can't be, and there's a racial factor as part of that. He's not black, but he ends up before he's in the freak show, he's with a family of African American people in a turpentine camp. And so he comes to, sort of experience their experience of being treated as different. And so his character evolved, to a lot of degrees, just sort of thinking through those different scenarios. I tried to, I'm a lawyer by training. And so one of the benefits of that is being a writer too, is that, you're trained to take the point of view, to be able to understand everybody's story. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a right to be heard. And so I try to put myself in the place of these characters, and particularly Johnny. How would I feel? I got this weird stuff on my back. I'm 11 years old. I'm thrown into this freak show. First thing, hey, go out and show your back. I'm petrified. What's going to happen here? And so that was part of the character development.
Does Johnny wind up enjoying the fame, or does it always feel to him like, what am I doing? Why am I here?
Well, it's some of both, and I don't want to give away the plot line, but you know, it's a. I think it's. I tried again to portray the experience that I felt like, you know, initially, you know, he's frightened, then he sort of comes to enjoy it. Said, "Hey, look at this! People come to see me, pay large amounts of money," and then he starts to, you know, later starts to feel a little bit like, "Well, is this all there is? My entire life, am I going to be doing this?" And so there's, you know, which I think are all sort of normal human reactions to somebody put in that circumstance.
Okay. Now, this is not all of Johnny's story. In addition to being part of this freak show, he's also pursued by this strange character. Now, without getting too deep into spoiler territory, what can you tell me about this person? Who are they?
Well, I think that that's, you know, for a long time, Johnny doesn't know who they are. And he has a memory of very early in his life where this person and the particular character has one arm is looking for him. And his Johnny's mother is trying to hide him from this person. And so he's, you know, it's sort of, you know, this the one-armed guy goes away and then he shows back up at one of the freak shows. And so again, Johnny, you know, he doesn't know who his father is. Is this guy his father? Why is this guy here? Why am I who is this? What's going on? And so it's all a little bit part of the mystery of discovering who he really is.
Okay. What is that journey like for Johnny? Like discovering like who he is. I mean, not just in terms of like where he comes from or who his parents are, but like where does he fit into the world?
Well, and I think a lot of that is trying to discover where he came from, you know. And so again, for me, I mean, I certainly knew who my father was, you know, that wasn't an issue. But for a lot of people in the world, they don't know who their father is. And I think it's sort of a, you know, again, putting myself in their position, one of the sort of, you know, struggles of their life. Well, why did this person abandon me? Who were they? You know, what was their story? What happened? And he doesn't know. And so that, you know, that drives his character to another degree, you know, for throughout the book, throughout his life. It's, you know, what was the deal here? What happened? And there's some religious aspects to that too. I mean, you know, people think Johnny is an angel. He's got these wings. Well, you know, where's the father? What's going on here? So that, you know, plays into it as well.
All right. Now, I imagine that this final book and your first draft are two very, very different things. How did the story change as you're writing it? Did you find yourself tossing like whole chapters or characters out as you went along?
Less so in this book. I mean, that my second book, The Gendarme, it's a too long a story to tell here, but I ended up changing the entire half the book because I was trying to get an agent, and the agent said, "Well, I think you know that story had a present day and a historical story." And the guy told me, "Oh, the historical story is great, but you need to change the entire present day story." I'm like, "God, I've worked on this for years. What do you mean?" And so, but I did. And even though he didn't end up taking the book, that was the version that got published. So you know, sometimes things happen for the best. But in this book, I more or less kept the same, you know, structure. As I mentioned, I played with it a lot in terms of the point of view, and I rewrote sort of half the book, you know, trying it out to see would this work better this way or not. And I ended up going back to the way I had it originally. You know, and a lot of writers, Max, will write. You know, some writers write. There's one character and they're going to write that character's chapters throughout the book and then go back and put other characters in. Some will write the beginning and write the end and fill in the middle. You know, I'm more sort of, it works for me to sort of start and work my way through it. And it keeps my mind in it and it sends to sort of, you know, things shift in different ways because as I think about the character, well, they wouldn't do this, you know, or they would do this. This was there's a character in the book that is an African American woman who was, you know, she was born a slave. Now she's free, but she works in this turpentine camp, which is about this far from slavery. And so, you know, she's the grandmother who teaches the kids and, you know, makes it all work. But there's an anger as part of it that I think is a very, you know, human thing that came to me late in the, and I was like, what would this person, you know, and she would, you know, she was, you know, there's anger because of her situation.
Okay. All right. Now we've talked about Johnny. We've talked about the mysterious figure, but of course you have I imagine you have a lot more characters. What was it like building the cast here? Who are some of the more like notable figures you have?
Well, this is a circus, right? So
Exactly
there's some
right. I
really
imagine.
strange ones, but again, I tried to differentiate them. So the freak show is run by a woman who is a dwarf, and her name is Tot, and they call her Tiny Tot, and so she's a pretty remarkable character, and she has to be super tough because of of her stature and that she's running the show, and so that's and she's had a hard life to get to where she is. So that's a fairly unique character. There's another who is he is not a freak. He's a performer, and he has a religious orientation, and so he's breathing fire and telling Johnny about the Book of Revelation, and so that's a sort of a unique situation there. And then there's another character who has a particular genetic disease, or not a disease, just a situation where he's covered in hair. So his name is Kenneth the Dog-Faced Man. And this was a common, an occurrence in freak shows. In fact, the documentary I mentioned, followed one of these people that was their orientation. And so again, Kenneth sort of has a third, different view of the world and being on the show. So having the circus as your background lends to itself to a lot of, I hope, are memorable characters.
I'll bet. I'll bet. All right. Well, we are coming close to the end of this conversation, Mark. But of course, we have to talk about the event you've got going on later in April. It's called the Word of South Festival. This is happening April 5th and 6th. It's totally free. You do have some musical performances, which I got to say, I wish I was down to check this out. You got the Violent Femmes, and then you got the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra on the 4th. But tell us all about this event.
Well, I'll try and make it a short story because it's been a long story to get there. So when the Gendarme was published, I got invited to speak at literary festivals around the country, and I'd never been to one. And so I'm thinking, man, we should do this in Tallahassee. But I was on the city commission here then, and I said I need to get off that. And so I got off, and we decided, well, I'd still like to do this. And we decided, rather than just being the Tallahassee version of the South Carolina Literary Festival, we would combine it with something, and we just picked music and said, well, let's try this. And so that was 13 years ago, and we're still going. This will be the 11th festival. And it's I thought when I started it, I'd be like, 5 years and I'm out, but I'm still there. But I'm proud of what we've done. It is really there, Max, there's nothing like this in the country. I mean, it's a really remarkable thing. And we pair authors and musicians in all sorts of weird ways. A couple of years ago, we had the historian John Meacham with this African-American guitar phenom named Yasmin Williams, and it was great. And this year we've got the Violent Femmes with the symphony. That show, that is actually a ticketed show, and it's sold out at this point. But the rest of the weekend we have the 70th anniversary of celebrating the 70th anniversary of George Clinton performing live, with members of Parliament Funkadelic, and it's so that'll be wild. So it's great authors. Chris Bajalian will be there. M.O. Walsh. It'll be it's really fun. Come down April 4th to 6th, Tallahassee, Florida.
Oh my God, I would absolutely love to. That's so cool. All right. Well, Mark, to wrap things up, of course, the big question to ask is what is next for you?
Well, I've got some other projects in the kind of in the wings here, and I've written so two of the three books I've written are historical fiction, and I have another great idea for a historical fiction piece. It's about a woman who was back in sort of Roman times, and whether I can do, I mean, the story is fantastic. Whether I can do anything with it, I don't know. And then I'm sort of intrigued by the whole. I want to do a story about a woman who's a psychic, and because I'm just sort of intrigued by the whole thing of being able. I mean, it's not beyond my realm of possibility that people can hear or see things that I can't see. And so anyway, so I think that's just sort of a fascinating area for fiction. So I'm working on that as well.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, Mark Mustian, thank you so much for joining me. And folks, March 15th, get your copy of Boy with Wings. You can get it online, of course. Go to your local bookstore, order a copy. If they don't have one, order it. That's what they do. And check out Mark Mustian, MarkMustian.com for all the information and get his other books, The Return and Gendarme. And Mark, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate this.
Max, thanks. It's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
All right. And for all you folks at home, thank you once again for checking this one out. And we'll see you all next time.